The Gospel for the fifth Sunday of Lent is written in the 11th chapter of the Gospel according to St. John, beginning at the first verse. Glory to you, O Lord. It's a long reading, and you each have a part. You can stand or you can sit as you're comfortable. You won't fall asleep because I said you do have a part to read, so, okay. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. It was the village of Mary and his sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair, and her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sister sent a message to Jesus.
Lord, he whom you love is ill.
Very good. But when he heard it, Jesus said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so the Son of Man may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him,
Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?
Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble because they see the light of the world. But those who walk at night stumble because the light is not in them." After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him,
Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right.
Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought he was referring mainly to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples,
Let us also go, that we may die with him.
When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him.
And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him,
I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.
and Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him,
Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world.
When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him,
Lord, come and see.
and Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said,
See how he loved him.
but some of them said,
Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have
Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and the stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him,
Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days.
And Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And the dead man came out. His hands and his feet were bound with strips of cloth, and his face was wrapped with the cloth. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him, let him go." And many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
So when Pastor Julie asked me to be with you today, she told me that your theme for Lent was seeking. Seeking. So as I thought and prayed about today, I was tempted to just ask everyone to grab a cup of coffee or a little water. We'll sit around and just talk. We gather in a circle and have a discussion and ask, what were you seeking this Lent? Or what did you discover for yourself as a congregation? But it's still Lent. And maybe that quest is not over yet. Maybe that quest is not over yet. Seeking. Seeking. For me, the word seeking brings to mind a quest. A hunting. It goes deeper, broader than just, I have a question. I'm a little bit older than some here today. Have a history of engineering and research before I became a pastor. I go back to the days when computers filled rooms, and only a limited number of technicians or engineers and trained operators were even allowed to touch the machine. Phones had rotary dials. Some of you maybe haven't seen that except for an old movie, right? And now we have these amazingly powerful computers, more computing power here than that whole room full of machine that I first used. We're connected instantly all over the world. We can use these magic devices and the magic of programs like Google or whatever you use to seek out all kinds of information. But, and a great big but, you can't always be sure what you'll find out there is accurate, is true. There are many voices out there. Sometimes we're not even sure what we're looking for. We just go browsing, wandering around. All of a sudden, the day is gone. Or we wind up being led into strange, maybe even dangerous places. If we follow the wrong voice, we can be led astray. The people of Israel, way back 5 centuries before Jesus, had listened to other voices. They stopped listening to God's voice. Maybe some just wandered off on their own. Maybe some were led astray. We don't really know. But we know what happened. They have stopped following God's voice. were taken into captivity by another empire. The prophets told them what would happen. They were warned. Their captivity was punishment for their idolatry, for their disobedience. God had sent prophets, had sent voices of warning, but those voices have been ignored. And now, in God's time, God sends another prophet named Ezekiel. Ezekiel heard the voice of God, and he listens. He responds. He obeys. Way back at the beginning of John's Gospel, the writer tells us that two of John the Baptizer's disciples heard John say, "Behold, the Lamb of God." We don't know why those two particular people had gone out to the river where John was baptizing. We don't know what they were looking for. We don't know what they were seeking. Now they heard. They listened to the words of John, and they went. This time, seeking Jesus. And when they come to where Jesus is staying, Jesus doesn't ask them, "Who are you looking for?" He asks, "What?" What are you looking for? What are you seeking? And they heard the living word. Their encounter with the living word answered their quest. And they went and told others, "We found the Messiah." All their questions weren't answered. There'd be much more to see, much more to learn in the coming years. Ezekiel sees the destruction of his people. He knows their lament, their loss of hope. He sees the valley of bones, the people dry, desolate. And Ezekiel questions God, "Can these bones live? Can these people be restored? Is there any hope?" He doesn't know the answer. He doesn't see how. But he had faith. He trusts. He listens to God. The God who once before has led his people out of slavery and provided for them, cared for them in their wilderness journey. Ezekiel knows that God is not the God of death, of destruction. God is the creator, the giver of life, the God of the living. And God says, yes, yes, these bones will live again. My people will be restored. I have not abandoned them. I am. I am. The same words that Jesus used to Martha. Like Ezekiel and the people in captivity in Babylon, Mary, Martha, those with them that day, saw only death. Their understanding at the time, but the people's understanding at the time, was the soul hovered around the body for 3 days. It's now been 4 days. Lazarus is truly dead. No longer any hope. In fact, when Jesus tells him, take away the stone, what does Martha say? He stinks. Yeah. And Jesus tells her, I am. I am the resurrection and the life. I am. In Greek, ego eimi. These are the same words that God said to Moses in the wilderness. I am. It's the word to Ezekiel. I am. The Bible is full of stories of miracles. In every case, Jesus explains the miracle, the significance, after the event. But here, he explains the significance before he raises Lazarus. The words, Lazarus, come out, are not the critical words in the passage. The critical, most important words are, ego eimi, I am. When Moses challenges God, who shall I say sent me? Whose authority am I to claim before Pharaoh? God says, I am. And now Jesus declares, I am the life. This is not about some undefinable future. This is the present. Here, now, in this time, in this place. The lament of Ezekiel, of course, is a metaphor for them and a metaphor for us in our time, our day. We ask, we seek, can there be peace in the world, in our cities? Even for some, can there be peace in our home? Can there be true economic justice? Can there be true racial justice? Can we ever stop destroying the very earth that keeps us alive? People are seeking, but too often looking in the wrong place, looking toward the wrong people. People who claim to have all the answers. People who are only after power for themselves. God doesn't ask us to just believe it'll get better sometime. God commands Ezekiel to prophesy to the bones now. Jesus told the people gathered in sorrow that day to roll away the stone, unbind Lazarus, that day. The prophecy seems ridiculous. The command seemed ridiculous. We look at our valley of dead bones and think there's too much to do. The problems are too big. I can't do it. For us, for me, it is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. God proclaims, I am. Jesus proclaims, I am. That's what we are to proclaim. We are the living hands, the living feet, the living voices of Jesus, here, now, in this place, in this community, in this time. It's what we proclaim every week when we gather at that table. Receive the very body and blood of Christ. And through that mystery, Christ lives in us. So we are indeed the living hands, living voice of God. Here, now, today. I don't know what to do. I can't do this. No, none of us can by ourselves, by our human power. So as you continue your quest, you're seeking this Lenten season, remember that with God, the impossible just doesn't become possible sometime. It becomes real now, today, in this place, in your place, in your life. Amen.